So today we're officially taking a look at the brand new iPad 10th Gen 2022 and the iPad Pro with M2. But the new iPad, the 2022 10th Gen, gets a design change. In fact, the design change is identical in a lot of ways to the iPad Air. This, to the right, is the iPad Air, and in the middle, I have the brand new iPad. And from a bezel standpoint, they're pretty much identical. The only way to tell the difference from the top is the placement of the cameras. The new iPad finally has the camera in a horizontal position, but everything else on the body is pretty much the same in the front as the iPad Air. Now, unfortunately, the display has one thing I thought they would get rid of with this new update, and it's still not laminated. The only way to get a laminated display is to buy the Air, the Pro, or the Mini. The regular 9th Gen iPad and the new one still has an unlaminated display. So what does that mean? Well, basically what happens is instead of having the display directly attached to the glass or as close to the glass as possible, there's a bit of a gap. And that gap is noticeable when you're looking down at each iPad. This new iPad is $449. This is a premium product. I personally think it should have a laminated display, but it does not. Now, in terms of screen brightness and quality, it's identical to the Air and the regular iPad. You still get up to 500 nits of brightness. It still has good color gamut. Everything looks great. I'm not noticing a difference there, but I am just happy that you finally have a properly placed webcam in landscape mode. Because let's face it, like, you buy this thing, you use it as a computer, and you have it in landscape mode, and you're talking to someone via Zoom, you want to be able to kind of have a proper visual, or you want them to have a proper visual of you talking, instead of having this like side view that happens to happen with the rest of the iPads. The quality is good. It does support center stage, so the camera will follow you around depending on where you're moving. It is ultra wide. But the things that change are mostly on the back. If you compare the iPad to the iPad Air, the connectors are in different positions. So on the iPad, they're on the bottom over here on the right side, okay? And on the regular iPad Air, it's on the back. So the iPad Air works perfectly with the Magic Keyboard, but there's a new sort of keyboard folio for the iPad, which is called the Magic Keyboard Smart Folio. It is kind of interesting because I do like it, right? So for example, it's kind of two pieces. So you have this like back piece that attaches via magnets to the back, and there's a hinge, very surface-like, that you can open up and put in any single position. But if you want the keyboard, you attach it to the front and it snaps right on the bottom. I like this keyboard better than the Magic Keyboard for one specific reason, and that's the fact that you get this function row at the top. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, they're probably gonna bring that function row to the Magic Keyboard. I don't think they are. And the reason being is because there's just not room. So for example, if I take the new iPad Pro with M2 and I attach it to the Magic Keyboard, what you have here is a situation where there's just not enough room to put a function row. Like, my fingers, when I touch the number row at the top, is already hitting the bottom of the display. And if they put a function row here, I'm gonna have to put my fingers under. Now, the one thing I truly don't understand is why they went with the original Apple Pencil. And not only is it a worse experience than the new 2nd Gen Apple Pencil, the way they did it is gonna make a lot of people annoyed. So there's USB Type-C on this iPad, which is great. We want USB Type-C on everything, but the original Apple Pencil still only uses Lightning. So even if you go to this Apple Store, for example, and you pick up the original Apple Pencil, you still have to spend an extra $10 for an adapter, or it won't connect to the iPad. Trust me, I'm here and I'm sitting with the Apple Pencil right now, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I can get this connected to the iPad without spending extra money on this $10 adapter. So what I did was I took the Lightning to Lightning connector out of the box, and then I connected it to one end of the pencil. Then I took my iPhone charger, which has USB Type-C to Lightning, and I connected the Lightning port to the adapter. And then what I did was I took the Type-C port and I connected it to the iPad. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. It just doesn't detect, and obviously it doesn't connect. Now the weird thing is there's actual magnets on top of the display. The pen will sit there. Like they're not as strong as the magnets on the Air or Pro, but the pen will rest. It's just not as secure. Like if I shake it, it's going to fall off. The other thing is Touch ID is a bit different on the older 9th gen iPad. It's in the bottom middle. Now it's embedded into the power button in the top right-hand corner. If you're buying this iPad, my suggestion is to have these two fingers, like your pointer fingers, be used to unlock your iPad, because when it's in portrait mode, you kind of want to use your right hand to unlock it. But once you have it in landscape mode, you want to use your left pointer finger to unlock the device. But most importantly, the speaker situation is better. This new iPad has stereo speakers, but there's one on each side, whereas the previous iPad, the speaker situation had stereo speakers all on one side. So when you're listening to music or playing games, you just have better separation with the new one. Now I can't give you a proper battery life estimate because I've only had this for a few days, but it feels very similar to the 9th gen iPad. So you should get very similar results. All day use, if you're using this thing hard, if you don't use it and you leave it on idle, you can be rest assured that when you pick it up, you might lose a couple of %, but you will have a lot of battery life left to use. Performance, it's good. Like this is using the A14, the 9th gen iPad is using the A13, and then the iPad mini is using the 15. So this sits somewhere in the middle. I played a lot of Genshin on this to test it out, and I find that the sweet spot is leaving it on high and then having FPS at 60. Now, as for the iPad Pro, there is less of a difference. It is literally the same design, same camera, same display, same body, same weight, same everything. The only difference is that on the new iPad Pro, you now have iPad Pro at the bottom compared to just iPad on the previous M1 version. You also have Smart HDR4 for photography, and you have a faster processor. The M2 is now present in the iPad Pro, so you should expect slightly better performance. And quite frankly, it's really hard to test performance on these guys because there's a lot of applications out there that still are not full-fledged like you'd find on a desktop that can truly push these things. Like, don't get me wrong, LumaFusion, a great video app, is probably your best case example, but I wanna wait for a proper desktop app like DaVinci Resolve to come to the iPad Pro. Now, I know Apple demoed DaVinci Resolve on one of their ads, but from what I understand, it's only the cut page and color page. So even though all these applications are coming down to it, they're still half-baked. Like, we're not getting the full versions of it. I still think the best application to showcase these iPads is probably Lightroom. Like, Lightroom works really well on these guys. So if you like sitting down on the couch and touching up photos, the iPads are great for that. I will say that if you use Procreate, like, that's still the main reason to buy an iPad Pro over a regular iPad, because now you have a new feature called Hover. And look, I don't understand why this is not coming down to the original M1 iPad. I feel like it's not limited by hardware. Like, this is something that Apple could easily implement via software, but this is what it basically does, okay? When you take your Apple Pencil and you have it over, let's say, a folder here, the folder starts to recognize at about 12 millimeters that the Apple Pencil is hovering. So at the moment, like when I'm doing simple stuff like this, it just gives you an indication of where your pencil is landing. Now, third-party applications can utilize this technology to implement more features in the apps they use. So for example, if I load up Procreate, right? And then, I go into the main menu, the gallery, for example, and I hover the pencil, or if I have it just resting here, for example, it kind of expands it in and out to let me know that the pencil is going to touch it. Is this 3D touch for Apple Pencil? I don't know. Like, we need more time to tell, but at least the tools that they're offering are getting more features to be precise with the applications that you're using. Anyways, that wraps up my first look at the iPad Pro and the iPad. I think if you are buying a new iPad for the very first time, just get the 9th generation version of it. You're still getting the same display. You're still getting a very similar processor. You're getting a very similar experience. The only difference is you don't have that new design. If you're a student and just want something to type on, then the iPad 2022 makes a lot more sense. The iPad Air is in a weird position now though, right? Like, it has the M1, but I feel like it just doesn't belong there anymore. I think you go iPad 9th, 10th, Mini, skip Air, keep iPad Pro 11 and 12. There's just so many options to choose from. Anyways, that wraps up my review. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.